He's a problem. The phrase, "your fave is problematic," was coined by a Tumblr user by the same name back in 2013. This blog was used to document celebrity and pop culture icons and their problematic behaviors, be it something as menial as a controversial statement to a maybe more problematic political view, or in some cases, literal criminal records, you know, all the fun stuff that us normal people go to jail for doing. The concept of the problematic fave did originate as criticism of the immunity that comes with celebrity status, but as the term disseminated into the general internet vocabulary, it started to see a different usage. Fandom culture used it to indicate a character that they held dear to their heart while accepting their flaws, though this usage tends to come without the criticism that the original intention had. And these days in 2024, it's mostly used on Twitter to dunk on a person or character that you don't like, regardless of how valid your reasons are. History lesson's over. Let's talk about why the warped image of what a problematic character is has led Netflix to butcher my boy Sokka in the live-action Avatar that no one fucking wanted. In latest press rounds for Netflix's live-action adaptation of The Last Airbender, Ian Owsley, who plays Sokka, said that Sokka's sexism was deliberately cut away at, as it had no place in the new remake. Now, let's not deny the truth. Sokka is sexist as fuck, but it was used intentionally and purposefully to build his character and the world. And I imagine Netflix choosing to cut this element is one of many decisions that led the original creators to jump ship a couple of years ago. Also, cut away at is an understatement. They've stripped it from him entirely. But I'll give the show credit where it's due. Sokka's sexism is replaced with an exploration of hypermasculinity, which I think is an interesting idea, but it feels pretty undercooked. I'll talk about that in a video on the second channel where I talk about my thoughts on the series as a whole. What Netflix seems unable to comprehend is that Sokka's sexism is a key part of his character development in the first season of the original series. In the opening moments of the first episode, we're introduced to
leave it to a girl to screw things up.
And
girls are better at fixing pants than guys, and guys are better at hunting and fighting and stuff like that.
While this is used to establish that Sokka is an immature 15-year-old with no parental figures to guide him morally, it's also immediately called out.
You are the most sexist, immature, nut-brained... I'm embarrassed to be related to you!
With that trait established, the show challenges it with warriors of Kyoshi Island. Aang and the gang rock up at Kyoshi Island, get tied up by the Kyoshi warriors, and Sokka's misogynistic outrage sets up a strong conflict between him and the leader, Suki. As the episode progresses, Sokka is routinely humbled by Suki's superior combat skills, and ends up admitting that his worldview was wrong by asking her to train him. But it doesn't end there. Sokka's not magically no longer a sexist. When Suki offers to train him, she says that he needs to wear the traditional Kyoshi garb to be a Kyoshi warrior. And Sokka objects to this because the idea of wearing a dress makes him feel emasculated. Now in 2024, Netflix has ripped out the entire conflict, and Sokka and Suki are exchanging flirtatious glances pretty much immediately. Sokka gets shown up by Suki multiple times, but instead of this being used to challenge his perspective, Suki ends up comforting his bruised ego. The romantic undertones feel really forced, and it also undermines Suki's character by having her paint Sokka as her equal, which he clearly isn't. But as much as I hate a lot of what Netflix has done with this adaptation, I do want to say casting Maria Zhang was a perfect choice. Her performance was brilliant, and I loved every second she was on screen, especially given that there's a lot of really shit acting in the show. So what's the reasoning to cut back on Sokka's sexism in the live-action version? And I quote, "There's more weight with realism in every way. There are things that were directed because it might play a little differently in live action," which to me reads as, we don't trust audiences to have the capacity to differentiate between fact and fiction, so we have to remove it before someone threatens to cancel their subscription, even though they never actually will. Keeping in mind that the original series was targeting 8-year-olds, The Last Airbender was trying to tell audiences that Sokka's misogynistic worldview was not only factually untrue, but harmful to the woman that he treated that way, and also himself, which is shown by him getting his ass kicked by a bunch of women A nightmare for some, but a dream for others, am I right? And it's not like Sokka's used as the misogynistic punching bag for the entire series. We are shown him growing from the experiences that challenge his worldview, and that's the point. One of the greatest benefits of consuming fictional media is the ability to explore things that we'd probably never be able or want to explore in the real world, like life-threatening adventures, the horrors of war, falling in love. Fuck, how'd that one get in there? The idea is that fiction allows you to explore these ideas without the risk or conflict that comes with experiencing them firsthand. With that in mind, do you think it's fair to say that taking the conflict out of fiction kind of castrates it? I know some people are going to argue that they want their fiction to be comfortable escapism, that they just want something to put on their TV and switch off and get some nice fuzzy feelings and go to bed not thinking about the state of the world. And I can't blame you one bit for that. But I've got to ask, would you describe Avatar as one of your comfort shows? I know I would, and it's a popular pick for very many good reasons. But I don't think any sane person watches an episode and is like, man, Sokka's sexism really turns me off this engaging world with beautiful characters that have really interesting relationship dynamics. That's just not how people work. It's not just Netflix that's watering down their media to create inoffensive, comfortable content for people to consume. It's an industry-wide problem. Some of you are gonna hate the example I'm about to use, but just trust me for a minute, okay? Cool. Let's have a look at how Marvel's portrayal of characters has changed over the 11 years between Iron Man and Captain Marvel. Tony Stark is established as a selfish, arrogant, alcoholic womanizer who makes his profit off the bloodshed of the weapons trade. Carol Danvers is established as a selfish, hot-headed amnesiac who's also an elite alien soldier. People often argue that the traits that Captain Marvel is often criticized for are the same ones that people love in Tony Stark so much, and that is a valid point. But there is a difference to how those traits are used in their respective stories. Hey, future editor Josh here. I just wanted to add that here I'm just talking about the narrative of these stories. The social and systemic reasons that female characters like Captain Marvel get criticized more harshly than characters like Iron Man is a video I am not equipped to make currently. But if you have any recommendations for someone that has made a good video about it, let me know in the comments, because I would love to watch it. But anyway, back to the video. Throughout Iron Man, Tony Stark has his hubris come back and bite him in the ass to move the plot forward. And there's no better example than right in the opening of the movie, where we see a Stark Industries warhead plant that lovely bit of shrapnel into his chest. In contrast, Carol Danvers encounters very little resistance across the course of Captain Marvel, though that's also due to a very convoluted plot that's trying to twist and turn like an exciting roller coaster, but it ends up kind of just writhing like a snake on a fleece blanket. By the end of each movie, only one of them feels like they've made any progress in a personal capacity, and it's not the one that was sandwiched between two of the biggest releases of the decade. So let's come back to where this all started. Your Fave is Problematic and their Tumblr blog. Up in the top corner, there's a little section called Now What? I think it's an important read that time is kind of stripped from the whole context of problematic faves. Am I still allowed to like them? Yes. You can like and consume their work without liking them as a person. You can even like them as a person, so long as you recognize they do have problematic issues. When praising them, don't ignore the problematic stuff. Talk about that too. While the team that ran that blog were specifically talking about real-world celebrities that were taking real-world actions with real-world impacts, I think we can apply the logic to our fictional examples too. You can like Tony Stark despite his arrogance and selfishness. You can like Sokka despite his sexism. Those flaws and how we get to experience those characters growing through those flaws is exactly why we love them so much. The good can indeed outweigh the bad. Now, it's not a clear-cut line. It's not up to me to tell you if Carol Danvers is more reckless than she's redeemable, or if Sokka's sexism is more annoying than he is charming. But writing characters without flaws makes them idols. Perfect, unattainable, inhuman, not that sort of inhuman. And I don't know about you, but I find it much easier to appreciate a fellow flawed human being than a caricature of perfection. Oreo, sponsor me.